All right, kids, we're back. So, if you've watched my deer skinning video I put out, you'll know this is about 5 minutes after that. But if you haven't gone and watched that, welcome to the video. So, we're going to go ahead and break down this deer right here. Normal cuts. Once again, as I say in all my videos, I'm not telling you this is the way to do anything. This is the way I do it. This customer just wants pretty regular cuts. They're getting stew out of the shoulders. They're going to get their back straps, leg steaks, stuff like that. So we're just going to kind of go through, break this down piece by piece. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Going to be a little speedy there for a little while. So we're going to go ahead and change the camera angle, and we'll see you guys in a second. All right. So normally, I usually try to push shoulder roasts. They're just great. They're good for the crock pot. But this customer is getting stew out of the shoulders. And what I do in that situation is I take the whole arm and shoulder blade off separately from the rest of the shoulder. I do that because that allows me to give them more back strap. Again, it's not as tender as you would say this middle back strap here, but it's still extremely tender. So what we are going to do, because again, we're going to angle it because I have a YouTube channel, is make our cut here and start to pull as we go. All right. So this was an archery killed deer. So I was, as you can see, I think that's your exit, actually. You're going to deal with some blood clotting. This deer ran about 100 yards. So obviously there's going to be more clotting in a wild game animal than there would be a domestically slaughtered animal because no headshots. And if you're doing headshots, good for you. But the majority of the people are taking vital shots. So there is a lot more blood clotting that you have to deal with. I am not, and I'm very upfront with all of my customers on this, I am not the butcher that goes through every single rib and pulls meat out. I do this for a couple different reasons. I'll go ahead and change the camera angle so you can see me working while I'm talking. Beautiful. Look at that. All right. Like I said, there's some blood clotting, so we're going to go through and clean this up. The reason I do not go through all of the rib bones and pull out all that meat is, I'm not going to say it's a waste of time, because it's not. You are getting some meat, but in a professional setting, you are not getting the bang for your buck on that product. No pun intended on that. Clean up some of that blood because that's still a very usable chunk. The other reason is I don't always trust how people gut their animals. Once again, these guys did a great job. Very clean inside, but you are also going to still deal with blood clotting. And like you just saw, if you watched the skinning video, there was some feces involved. There was some feces still in the cavity that we had to deal with. So on a cleanliness factor of it, I don't like to go through all that because at the end of the day, you're spending 20 minutes trying to get as much meat as you can off the bone, and some of that meat could be tainted. I guess tainted is the good word for that. So pop that. chunk off the shoulder blade. So now that you see that opening, you can see that opening right there where the shoulder blade connects. I'm gonna open that up. Let's set that aside, and we're just gonna open up this shoulder blade. Now your shoulder blade's separated. You've got the shoulder, and we're just gonna finish cleaning this up. And what we're also gonna do is this customer is getting shanks. So you can see your elbow right there. What we're gonna do is we're gonna cut right here, and we're gonna separate this shoulder roast from the lower shank bone. And like I said, that can be easily done with making an incision cut and just letting gravity do the work. All right, take off whatever hair is right there. So there's your shank. Looks a little wonky because it's the foreshank. Again, if you had a bandsaw, which I do, but I'm not going to bother getting that going, you could do a lot cleaner cut, and you can cut this nub off on the end. We're not going to worry about that because it's all going to eat the same. So, also, which I don't have, it is helpful to have a scraper or something to clean your work area off, especially with venison. Because once again, you're dealing with a gunshot wound that is going to clot. So if you can keep your workspace as clean as possible, you're going to end up with a better result at the end. So we're going to pop that off. Pop that off. All right. So what you're looking for is nice, clean pieces like this. You want to get as much silver skin off as you can because it's gross. You don't want the silver skin on there. It's going to be chewy. And you also do not want the fat. Deer fat is not the same as pork fat or beef fat. It is very, very waxy. If you've ever had deer fat, you've known it. It'll basically coat the inside of your mouth. I'm not saying deer fat is completely awful. You can take it, render it down, use it for waterproofing boots or tarps or stuff like that, but I do not suggest eating it. When I process the grind or the sausage for deer, I add pork back fat. Gives it a lot better flavor and consistency. So, like I said, this is going to be stew. So what we're going to do, cut that chunk off. It's pretty blood clotty. And just start removing silver skin. This is your blade, which again, if you've seen any of my beef videos, it's a blade, but smaller. So, same technique. You're just going to hold down one end and just work your blade over. So I am just making a big pile of clean meat that at the end I can work through and stew up. I'm sure some of you might be looking at this video and going, Kyle, you're throwing out some red there. Yes, there is some red I'm throwing out. But it's connected to something that is not edible. And the amount of time and energy you put into pulling off every single speck of red. I'm not going to say it's not worth it. Again, I literally just reiterated this. I'm not going to say it's not worth it, but you're going to be spending a lot of time. When I first started, I was that person that I would pull every single chunk of red meat I saw. And at the end of the day, you're not ending up with another 20 pounds of meat. You're ending up with another maybe a pound. And it, sorry about that. It probably won't be the best quality. So now we're at the shoulder. We're going to pop this chunk of fat out. And we're just going to break it down like we would any other shoulder and pull this arm bone out. All right. If there is a little fat in your burger, again, it's not the end of the world. The overwhelming majority of the fat content that's going to be in it is the pork fat, and it'll mask whatever's in there. Basically, the only real game fat that I would ever really suggest putting in your grind, and I don't even have them up here, is probably wild pig, because again, it's pork. If you look at any ungulate, that includes deer, elk, moose, they all have this waxy fat that's just going to coat your mouth, and you're not going to have a fun time. So now that I've got almost all of this cleaned up, now I'll start cleaning it up and chunking it into stew. We're not going to do a ton. They don't want a ton, but we'll turn this one shoulder into stew. Again, it'll be 2 pounds, enough to have a decent meal with, 2 or 3 pounds. But they are looking for more burger than anything, so that's what we'll give them. All right, so got about 1.5 packages of stew out of this. More than likely, I'll take this shoulder as well, turn that into stew. This one has a decent more blood clotting, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to just go ahead, bust that off camera, and I will pull you back when I am cutting back straps out. So we'll see you guys in a second. All right, so we're going to keep breaking this guy down. What I like to do first is we're going to pop this neck off. So if you look at it, you can obviously see where the natural curve is of it. Easy. Calm down, people. And what I'm going to do is make an incision cut first. That way we're not fighting the meat. And then I cut through that spine real quick. Pop that neck off. So what I like to do next is before we take these back straps off, again, pull whatever hair you see. There's still a little bit left over. You don't want a ton of it on your bench. Again, it's going to happen. It is what it is. But if you can mitigate as much as possible, that is what is desired. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull these flanks off, and you can see there is your back strap, and there is the separation of your back strap. and that goes all the way down. Obviously, there's some blood clot in here that we're going to have to deal with, but we will get there when we get there. So we're going to pop that off, and we'll start with this side. And you're going to follow the natural seam that's there, and that's the bottom of your leg. So you are going to see, and you can do a little pulling as well, you're going to see, once you get in here, where your back strap starts. So that's where your back strap is, and you also want to be sure that you're not cutting your tenderloins as well. So what I like to do, I see where that loin is, and I'm just going to continue that all the way down. So now we'll go ahead. That's a little gnarly. And I'm going to make a cut on the inside here, and we're going to peel the rest of this flank down. Now you can see it. All right, so there's one flank, and we will go ahead and pull off this second side. All right, so we'll readjust this camera real quick and go through. But just so you can see, I'll go through, angle that a little bit better. Ooh, there we go. I'll go through, pull this stuff. Everything that's on the outside, I'll go through and clean up because it's worth it. But as you can see, all of this meat that's right here, if you look on the inside, it's pretty blood clotted around it. And it's, once again, it's something I vocalize to all my customers that I don't do it. So they're not shocked at the matter. I think I've only had one person kind of give me a hard time and decide not to go with me for that reason. And that's their right. So we'll go ahead and do the neck first. And again, we're just going to clean up all the fat, all the sinew, whatever blood clotting's here. clean all that up. So like most animals, you have to deal with this tendon that's right here that controls the neck and head. So what I like to do is just split that on either side, pop it out, toss it. And then all we got to do is just work your knife down. Again, you can go through this with a fine-tooth comb and take every chunk of meat out that you can. But again, it's what time you're putting into it for what reward you get out of it. I would much rather, like to say if this was my deer, what I would do is I would take this tendon out, take the esophagus out, and keep this as a whole roast. Toss this whole thing in your crock pot, and you have an awesome meal for your family. You're getting every chunk of fat, every chunk of meat off of this thing because it's going to slow cook its way off because it's a neck. This meat is tough. Obviously, you're not going to throw this on the grill. You could toss it on the smoker, get yourself a real nice roast. This is going to be more in the pot roast category. All right. Again, as you can see, I've denuded this pretty well. It's a fun word I never use. Again, if I wanted to, I could sit here with a paring knife and pull every single chunk of meat off of this thing. But once again, you're only going to be getting about a quarter pound of meat off the rest of that, if that. So, neck looks good. We're just going to chunk it. When it comes to game meat, when I make sausage, I fine grind everything. Normally on like a pork sausage, you do somewhat of a coarse ground for your sausage. On wild game, I do fine grind on everything because you are dealing with more sinew. If there is some fat in there, it'll get turned in better on a fine grind. Pull off that little nasty section. All right, your neck's done. Now on to the flanks. This is where it gets fun. So, as you can see, ton of blood clotting. This works better when you break it into sections. So, we'll start with this section over here. And we're going to separate this out. More than likely, this part will be all in black and white to try and make sure that YouTube doesn't take this down because, oh boy, it's blood and no one can see it. Yeah, it is what it is. I'm not bitter about it at all, as you can tell from my voice. So, we're going to finish cleaning that up. Again, a little bit of fat sinew, not a big deal. You just don't want giant chunks like that in there. So, we are going to go ahead, take that whole chunk out. All right, so now on this other section, the clotting wasn't as bad. This part wasn't great, so we'll go ahead and chunk that out. And then just kind of clean off all this silver skin and sinew. A little more blood clot in there will pop away. If this was a little bit colder, I could have probably just pulled that whole section right off, but we're running wild today. All right. If you want to help your grinder, because I'm sure the majority of people who are watching this do not have a 250-pound capacity grinder that you could toss a horse in and it'd be fine. So a good tip with it, especially if you are leaving a little bit of silver skin or sinew on, is really chunk it up. Really small. Because pieces like this big. Because that way you'll be able to feed it into your grinder better, and it's already partially broken down. All right. So I'm just going to go speedy on this one, because again, you can see it's pretty clotted up. Actually, probably can't at that angle. Yummy. All right. So I'm going to get speedy for a second. We'll bust through this, and we'll see you guys in a second. All right, and we're back. So I went through, cleaned up a little more of this, whatever was really worth taking off. Again, if you want to, take all the time in the world and go through every single rib, get all of it. But it's, again, one of those situations. I'm not going to say it again, even though I'm about to say it again. It's about the time you put into it and what you get out of it. So it's the last time I say it, I promise. And if I do, slap me. Holding you to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull these tenderloins out. We'll clean off some of the suet so we can see everything a little bit easier. So the problem that most people have with pulling off tenderloins is I'm getting a phone call. I'll be right back. Hi there, I'm back. So what I was saying is the issue that most people run into is when they're pulling out tenderloins, they usually pull it out while they're gutting it because it's like, hey, here's our treat for finally getting this deer. We're going to cook the tenderloins. And all they do is they cut right here because that flap we just took off covers about this much. Your tenderloin starts right here. So you're leaving a lot of meat on the table when you pull it off in the field like that. So they did not pull the tenderloins off. So what we'll do, make our incision cut, come right here and make that cut, and open these bad Larrys up. And obviously you can't see because my fat arms are in the way. So, and what I like to do is make an incision along the spine as well. I'll do that on both sides while I'm here. And then once you get past the pelvis, which is right here, and I will take advantage of the moment while I'm here to cut along that pelvis so we can pull out our back straps in a second. And then again, we're just gonna use the sharpness of our knife to pull those out. So there you have a nice tenderloin. We'll go ahead and do the same thing on this side. Again, if you're looking at it, You're looking at your legs and you can kind of see it. You're going to be cutting right here. So basically, if you're looking at the deer hanging, where the hole in the pelvis is, right here. Cut, follow the pelvis down. And open this up. If you have a meat hook, it is helpful. I don't know why I'm not using it. All right. You don't want to put too much pressure because then you'll end up breaking it. All right. Now that you got enough of it out, you can just finish pulling it the rest of the way. All right. I'm going to come back and continue that cut as I did on this opposite side where the pelvis is. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and pull these back straps out. Once again, get your hook. We're at a weird angle because of the spin, so we'll go ahead and spin around that way. All right. So as you can see, there you go. We made those incision cuts along the back of the pelvis. There's your spine. So what we're going to do, put our knife right there and just follow the spine all the way down. What I like to do is get my hook, hook it up in there, and you can come in on this side and kind of start opening it up there until you start getting that pull. Beautiful. All right. So now once you get a handle on it, again, leverage, pressure, and a little bit of knife work. And you can just pop this whole back strap right out. So, and this is also the reason why, once again, if I'm not doing shoulder roasts, I will leave that part of the shoulder on because it gives you about 2 or 3 more chunks of nice tender back strap to work with. So, one back strap. Then come in on this side. I'll do the same gosh darn thing. All right, so get off there. Got both back straps pulled off of this. We're going to go ahead and clean up the tenderloins first. So we're going to pop these chains off. The chain is the section of meat and fat that goes along the tenderloin. Very easy to pull off. Literally, you just do that. If you were doing a beef tenderloin, that's the head. There's what it's called. That usually comes off when you're doing deer. Not a big deal. If you're doing any tips or anything like that, you can toss it into that. And then all this blood clotting comes right off because it's not actually clotting of this section of meat itself. It's just the clotting from the animal bleeding out. So it usually cleans off pretty easy. So, a nice, beautiful tenderloin. There's a little bit of silver skin there, so we'll just go shink. And we'll just pop that off. So, there's one tenderloin. This one is bit cut up. Looked like they might have nicked it during cutting. Not a biggie. So I'm not going to try to salvage the whole thing. We're just going to slice that. And clean off the nasties. And we'll keep the usable. So, just clean off all the yucky. All right, so we got one that's a little bit smaller, but I'll tell you what, it's going to be just as delicious. So, backstrap time. This is probably, well, again, for the majority of people, this is what you're going for. You're going for the backstrap. You want this big chunk of meat. If you ask me, I'm going for these guys. Shanks are hands down, shanks and shoulders are hands down my favorite part of a deer. They are very versatile. You can do a lot of stuff with them, and they're absolutely freaking delicious if you cook them right. But, obviously, backstraps are also insanely delicious. So, what we're going to do is we're going to clean up all the silver skin. This is your shoulder end. So this is a chunk of the shoulder that's still connected, and what we're going to do is we're just going to pop that off. Clean that up real quick. Grind. A little bit of that tendon there. We'll pop that off. All the sinew, all the fat, you want that off. It's not going to taste good. A lot of it just pulls right off. And again, you can come back around with it. And break all that off. So, what you're left with now is your main loin. As you can see, there's quite a bit of silver skin on this. So we're just going to square it up a little bit. Now, depending on where you made your cut, as you can see, this chunk of silver skin is kind of rounded over. So what I'm going to do is my first cut. It's going to be popping that off. So now, what I can do, I'll go ahead and flip it over. I'll look and see where that starts, and we're just going to fillet it like a fish. So, we got most of it on that one. And then, whatever red is on here, you can lay it flat. Take your knife. Got to get the right angle on it. And we'll just pop all that right off. All right. And then all you got to do, go through. That was a little too sinewy. And finish popping off the rest of this. You don't want any of this on your steaks. It's very chewy. Holds a little bit of that gaminess people talk about. All right. And then just kind of clean up the bottom of that. All right. So when I cut my back straps, I do not cut medallions. I cut about 3-inch chunks. So I do this because if you do the medallions, they dry out very quick. If you do it this way, you end up with a really nice piece of meat. You can toss on the grill, cook it to medium rare, and you're not worried about overcooking it or drying it out. All right, so now I'm going to go really, really fast doing this one. So we will see you guys in a second. All right, how's it going? So now we're going to go ahead and pull these back legs down. Now you can go ahead and use a Sawzall or a bandsaw to remove this spine, or if you cut right under the pelvis here at that main joint, and then come on this back end, we'll loosen that up too. And then you just get your chiropractor on and just go snap. I was meant to hold on to that. So, go ahead and toss that in a rendering. Now we just got the legs. So, once again, they are keeping the shanks. So what we're going to do is just going to bring this whole thing over to the bench. Bring this to the sink, don't need it anymore. And we'll re-angle you. You don't need to see my ugly mug anymore. We're cutting stuff. Ooh, earthquake. All right, we're going to make it. It's all going to be fine. Okie dokie. So, this is how I handle this situation. So once again, we are going to be keeping the shanks on these. And again, I'm not going to worry about getting the bandsaw going. So we are going to cut the ends off of these. I did not on the foreshanks just because they are not as big and it's not as big as an issue. These, you have to deal with the tendons and all that. The best way to do this is to cut these off while the legs are still whole. So what we are going to do is remove both of these legs off the pelvis. So we're going to make, you can feel where the pelvis is. Pelvis starts right here. And we're going to make our incision cuts. We're just going to follow this bone down, expose that ball joint that I was talking about in the skinning video, and just work all the way around the bone. Now you got to give me a little leeway. This is my first deer of the year. But once the end of November rolls around, I can usually debone these things about 1.5 minutes. All right. So there's one. And then we'll go two. We'll start the opposite direction on this one, because why the heck not? It's a free country. All right. So once you get it like this, once you have your first incisions made, you can use this pelvis to kind of, once again, give you some leverage. And I'm sure, as you've noticed, I have only used one knife for this whole thing. You don't need a ton of knives to do a deer. Victorinox, 6-inch boner knife. This is the wood handle, just because I like the wood handles. I like the way they feel in the hand. Again, don't take that one out of context. All right, so now we have our legs separated. We're going to cut that tendon. That part's already starting to come off, so we'll do that. And now we're going to cut that joint off. So, like I said, if you put it into context, that's the shank off the 4/4. If you were trying to hold this, it would be moving all over the place. When you have this, you have all the weight of this to be able to hold down, as well as the shank. So now, all I'm going to do is hold down here on the shank and angle it up. All right. So now those are taken off. So this customer is getting the max amount of steaks they can get out of it. So we're going to go ahead. We'll break down one in normal speed so I can show you everything, and we'll break down the second one. And then I'll show you a nice, pretty tray of cuts at the end. So now, their whole deer ham, shank attached. You're going to take it, pop it up like this, cut right there. It's going to separate that shank. You're just going to cut like that. Get a nice deer shank. Toss that on the tray. So, now, before I start fully breaking this down, I'm going to go through and pull out all the major chunks of fat, all of the dark parts from where there were already cuts made last night during the gutting process, things like that, just to streamline it once I do start fully breaking this down. Again, any hair I see, take that off. All right, so now it's the same as every lamb and goat video you've watched me do, as well as pig. So we're going to start, see your bone there, start there, and separate that top round and round tip. Flip it over, come on this side, do the same thing on the tip. And then we'll just take that right off. Now, deer bones are very similar to pork and lamb bones. They are not great for dogs. They will splinter. Your dog will choke on them. You'll end up having to get your dog's stomach pumped. It's not a fun time. So I usually just toss them. Another good thing is if you have chickens, if some of you are watching me deal with that rib cage and going, man, that's a lot of waste on that. One, that's not really a lot of waste. But two, if you have chickens, take that whole rib cage, toss it in the chicken coop. Your chickens will absolutely destroy that in no time. A little bit of free protein for them. Can't beat it. So, kind of hacked the tri-tip on that, even though the tri-tip is not really a thing on venison. Just grind it. So, round tip. There is the rest of your tri-tip. Again, if you wanted to save it, you can. We'll just go ahead and toss it in the grind for now. So, next we're going to pop this top round off. Right here is your knuckle. So, that's just ground. Here's your top round. Framing, Kyle. People need to see this stuff. I hope you guys appreciate me talking to myself in the third person. It's been very interesting learning to film myself and talk to you guys who are listening and watching, and also not feel like an absolute crazy person. So, there's your eye round. And what you're left with is your bottom round and your sirloin. Now what I like to do is remove the sirloin separately. If I was doing a beef or something like that, you would take this section of the bottom round and leave it on the sirloin. But because it's a deer, itty bitty, we're going to go ahead and leave the bottom round as a whole section. So we will start with the bottom round and cut our steaks. Go ahead, clean that sinew off. And also clean this fat off the back, because we don't want waxy mouths. A little bit too much fat to throw in the grind on that. All right, so clean off a little bit more right there. Square us off, and we are good to go. So, customers are looking for 1-inch steaks on this. So, we are just going to go through. And those are your bottom round steaks. At the end of this, I'll go through this tray and we'll just kind of talk everything over and what everything looks like and how delicious it all looks. This is your eye round. I keep these whole. It's one of those on a beef, I don't even look at them. Maybe I'll turn them into minute. If it's personally, I might turn them into minute steaks. More than likely, they're just going in the grind. For venison, it's a nice little steak you can cook up. Don't put it next to your tenderloins. You're obviously going to be able to tell which is which, but don't shoot yourself in the foot before you pull your gun out. We're going to clean up this sirloin a little bit. There is like a nice fatty chunk under your sirloin. So go ahead and clean that out. And we are also going to keep this whole. This is a nice little steak right there. Can't beat that. All right, your top round. So I pull the cap off because I don't feel the need to keep that on there. Toss that in the grind. And then this preps just like you would a beef top round or anything else. There's a seam right here. You open up, trim out that fat. Don't cut your hand like I almost did. All right, so go ahead and square that off. Once again, 1-inch steaks. Once again, you got some nice grilling steaks to put on there. Do them in the fry pan, do them on the grill. Season them however you want. You're going to be happy with it. So now you got the round tip. Now again, if this was a beef, you can cut steaks out of it. They're going to be a little chewier. They're not going to be crazy. A lot of the time, if people are looking for extra steak tips, I will pull them out of here on a beef. But on venison, they're fairly decent decently tender steaks. So we're just going to go ahead, pull all this silver skin off. All right, she's all pretty. I'll square it off. Get some 1-inchers out of there. All right. So, again, you got some nice little steaks there. These guys might be a little bit chewier, again, compared to the top round or something like that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'll do this one real quick. So you'll see me at super speed. And when I'm done, I'll pull this tray out and we will talk about it. So we'll see you guys in a second. All right. So go ahead and bring this around so you get a better view of what we're looking at. Not that view. Here. Trying to figure out with the iPad. So we'll figure it out. All right, cool. So look at that. Get professional with it. We got your shanks. These are from the front and the back. Once again, these are fantastic. Toss it in the crock pot, toss them on the smoker, stuff like that. Got your stew, probably about 2 pounds. Got your tenderloins, one full size, one a little bit dinkier. Still going to be delicious. Got your backstrap chunks. Again, reason I cut them this way. You can toss this on the grill. You're not going to dry it out in a minute and a half if you cut these into medallions. Eye rounds. Once again, you can grill them. You can pan fry them. Do just about anything with them. And that pretty much goes for the rest of your cuts. That's your sirloin. I like to keep these whole because it's a nice sizable piece of meat. Will feed one person. If depending on how much you eat, it'll feed 2. And then you have all your individual cuts. You have your bottom rounds, your round tip, and your top round. So, and then we probably have about, I'd say about 15 pounds of grind. I'll go ahead and pull this over so you can see the grind. Again, there is a little bit of fat and sinew in here, but not enough that it's really going to affect the grind. We're going to pop this in the cooler tonight, let it chill off a little bit more, and I'll be adding pork fat in the morning. And I don't know if I'll be filming that. Last time I did a grind video, it didn't really do well. So, but I might, for ratio sake, film it so you guys can kind of have a view of that. So, I appreciate you guys watching. And yeah, no. So, like I said, we are right at the very beginning of archery season. I don't do many archery deer. So I figured I had a little time today. We had this deer come in. Might as well get it done. So as we get further into rifle season, there will be a lot more venison content. I assume I'll probably get a handful more bears coming in at some point soon. Everybody cross your fingers for a moose. I'd love to get a moose in here. So other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you learned a thing or two. And yeah, see you next time.